And coming near the end of this brief meditation, bringing up the thought of kindness. May the merits of this meditation be for my peace and happiness, and for the peace and happiness of everyone. And when you're ready, open the eyes and move the body a little bit to be comfortable. Really close. Oh.
Let's just do a test. Can everyone hear? If you can't hear, raise your hand. Raise it higher, so I can see.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Really close. Dear friends, well, Shari, at what time do we need to break so that the people can get ready for the lunch? 11 o'clock. Okay. So I'd like to speak a little bit right now about the Dhamma and why meditation leads to peace, and how we should, as we can look at this entire training that was given to us by the Buddha in the context of practicing for peace. And I'll also like to give time for questions. One of the basic principles of the Dhamma is the idea of not harming. All beings have the desire for happiness, including ourselves. And because we know and understand this, then we should try not to cause any harm, not to harm our own self, and not to harm anybody else, not to harm any creature. This is a very deep teaching if you begin to think further about it and understand what is really meant by what is harmful or what is not harmful. It could be that a normal person who hasn't thought about it, who has got emotions, may react to the things that happen. They may feel upset or distressed when things are not the way they want them to be. And then if they think about not harming, they could think, let me get what I want. And then if I get what I want, then I shall be happy. And so the way to not harming is I should get all the things that I want. But if you reflect a little bit more deeply and you look back over your life, you may realize that getting what you want only takes away the upset for a very short amount of time. It's not a very durable or solid way to happiness. So in a certain way, the simple teaching about letting go of what the Buddha refers to sensual desires, and that's not ruling out the desire for true happiness or the desire for spiritual accomplishments or attainments, the desire for the finding the way to the end of dukkha. So our spiritual quest is something. There can be a certain amount of, like a chanda or a wish, especially at the beginning, that we wish to discover the way to the end of suffering. And the Buddha does not tell us that we can't have that wish. But if people are reacting to the wishes that are related to the more basic needs of life, the wish for comfort, the wish for rest, the wish for entertainment, the wish for nutrition, the wish for safety. Those kinds of wishes are can be a bit of like a fool's errand. We can spend our whole life trying and trying and trying to gain safety, to get something to eat, to get some shelter, to get some safety, to get some reputation, to get love. And at the end, we may still be emotionally vulnerable and easily upset, easily depressed, not gaining the true safety, something more stable than that. Many schools of thought, not only Buddhism, but many schools of spiritual quest and schools of religion understand that there are more durable, more long-lasting, more secure, and more stable kinds of happiness, kinds of well-being, and that we should let go of the low and unstable, emotional kinds of fleeting pleasures for the sake of some higher pleasure, some higher happiness. I would say that the first noble truth is the truth of dukkha, which was when the Buddha came to his realization and was trying to find the formula, find the way to explain it so that people could learn. A major part of the work that we have to do throughout our lives is to understand our own dissatisfactions, our own depressions, our own upsets, our own unpleasant or afflictive kinds of reactions, and to just look into it with a feeling of kindness, compassion, goodwill towards ourselves, curiosity, taking an interest. And because of that, then we try to understand if something has happened that's causing tears, causing grief, causing sorrow, then look into it. Where is the sorrow coming from? And we may find that selfish and greedy behavior seems to give pleasure, but in the end it doesn't. Or we may find that running away from something that frightens us may seem to give safety, but really it doesn't. We may find that fighting with something that makes us angry may seem to make us feel better, but in the end it doesn't. And when we make those discoveries, then the initial stage of this idea of harmlessness could be, may I respond with compassion instead of with anger? May I be willing and able to face up and remain present for something that is frightening instead of running away? And may I be careful and cautious about the things that I want, knowing that getting what one wants can give only a temporary, short kind of happiness, not long-term happiness. And so then comes this first idea, this idea of not harming. May I not do a harm to myself or to anyone. While we're practicing meditation, one of the great things about meditation is we are not doing any harm while we're practicing meditation. While we are watching the breath, or being aware of the sensations in the body, or being aware of the phenomenon that's arising and disappearing, simply watching without planning to do anything, without undertaking to do anything, with only the one intention to just stay present, to be in the present moment and to watch. So as long as that's what we're up to, we're not hurting anybody. We're not planning to hurt anybody. And this is really great. One could actually rejoice and have a tremendous sense of relief just with the meditation that we're taking a vacation from the harmful tendencies of the mind. So that harmful tendencies of the mind could be if one is unfortunate enough to be in a state of competition or a state of war, to win the contest, to come out ahead of one's competitors, to defeat one's enemy, or to make a protest, to make a conquest, to tease one's enemy and make one's enemy to feel bad. There's so many different ways that this can be manifested. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's in this world. That kind of activity of hurting your enemies for fun is something that is very common for people to do in this world. Teasing and bullying is something that's very common in this world. So if you have ever engaged in bullying or hurting, or just helping yourself to get ahead without being considerate of the feelings of others, then you could acknowledge that you're able to do harm. You're able to have that intention of harming and hurting another one because of anger or because of aversion. And if you know that you have that capacity, you might know that it also can sometimes happen that the mind can become obsessed with some kind of aversion. The phrase I like to use for that is that so-and-so always does that to me. So if there is somebody in your life who you dislike, who's unpleasant, who's painful to be around, who's frustrating to be around. And then you've got this idea of being dissatisfied with the way that person is in your life. And it could become kind of an obsession that when you sit down to rest, you sit down, you just have a cup of tea or have some rest. And the thing comes to mind is that difficult person, that enemy. And then you start to think about how bad they are and how they should be different than what they are. Um, uh, and these kinds of thoughts are actually a poison for your own mind. And when you realize that that kind of thought is a poison, then you want to be able to let go of that kind of thought and prevent that kind of thought from arising. While you're sitting and practicing meditation and just watching your breath, you're not thinking about teasing your enemy or beating up your enemy or competing with your enemy or making your enemy be different than what they're like so they could be nice. Your mind is not involved with that particular obsession. And so in that way, there's something that's very healing about this. A person who is obsessed in that way with their enemy, you could say they would truly be mentally ill. And a way to overcome mental illness is to learn how to let go of that pattern and to put in a different pattern. Likewise, there are certain ways that are not obviously afflictions, but ways that the mind keeps oneself constantly busy. To me, even in the monastery as a monastic, we have a certain number of chores to do, and the chore list is longer than the amount of time that's available. And so one can be constantly sort of unbalanced or fretting or nervous or feeling not comfortable and not at ease because one is worried about the projects that still have to be done, worried about the problems that are still not yet solved. And so that constant worrying is also a kind of a mental illness, a kind of a sickness. It's something that preventing the mind from really being at ease. And so then learning how also to put down that type of worrying, even though there is a right time and a right way to think of doing something good and to reflect and plan even for doing something good to prepare the mind and let the mind practice and be prepared to do something good. Those kind of thoughts can be wholesome, but if the thoughts are touched with constant worry and remorse or nervousness like that, then those also are not healthy to keep all the time constantly. And for that same reason, being able to have meditation as a regular part of life, saying during this moment for half hour, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, whatever length of time is the meditation period, that I'm not going to do anything. Even if I have a lot of things to do, during that half hour, the only thing I'm going to do is to be aware of the object of meditation. And so in that way, I'm letting the mind have a rest, and it's a very healing, healthy thing for the brain and for the mind to take a rest from time to time like that. People seem to be very strongly driven by the things that are frightening or the things that are dislikable. There is a certain drive for pleasure, what they call sensual pleasure, which is worthy of analyzing. The most dangerous kind of sensual pleasure is when you don't know how to cope with the things that are frightening or the things that are hateful. When you don't know how to cope with things that are painful and difficult, the way that an average uneducated person would cope with them is by going for pleasure. So let's go to a party, let's have a drink, let's make love, let's go into having some pleasant daydreams. And it's because they are running away from pain is the reason why those things are pleasant in the first place. So if that's the kind of pleasure that a person is into, then they need to reflect, they need to watch, they need to look at that. They need to see the danger in that. Even if somebody is not filled with hatred or fear or aversion, sometimes when people are facing the normal sorrows of this life, if there's grief or if there's depression or if there's anxiety, which is because of causes and conditions, it can be a kind of a constant or a chronic factor of life. And then a person can learn to use pleasure as an escape. So it's a delicate balance, but don't be aware, be cautious about using pleasure as an escape. For most people, especially at the beginning of meditation, merely breathing in and out is kind of like a neutral experience. And it's the very neutrality of it that makes it a good objective meditation, because one is able to watch the breath and you're not necessarily feeling excited or upset about breathing. It's just a point of calmness. So that's why it's a good object for meditation. So feeling, making this kind of a resolution, this thought, or this intention of not harming is the very same intention that's very related to the practice called the practice of loving kindness. And the practice of loving kindness is one of the very first practices that can bring about peace internally for each one of us. So we're not at war with ourselves. We don't get excited. We don't lose our temper and do something unkind or aggressive because of losing our temper. If we are very well practiced and well developed in that practice of loving kindness. And the practice of loving kindness, when it becomes systematic, when it becomes community practice, when within one's family, within one's school, within one's place of work, within one's temple, within one's town, when we go to the city hall, or when we go to a community meeting, or when we go to a meeting of the board of directors, or some government meeting, or when we're teaching the children, or training the trainees, or going to serve the customers at work. At all of those different occasions, if the mind is habituated towards loving kindness, and if that becomes a strong and consistent habit of the mind, then one may intuitively know how to behave in a way which is courteous and pleasant towards others. And even if there's something coming along which is a problem or something unpleasant, nevertheless, one is keeping a kind and courteous approach. And this is both supporting one's internal peaceful deportment, and also contributing to social harmony or social peace. So this practice of peace is both to become peaceful inside and also to become a harmonious person. If you're lucky enough to have a group of harmonious people associating with each other, then there are a lot of fantastic opportunities for human growth and human potential to be realized. If you're in a sort of an average group or an average society, you can still know that most people, even children, even criminals, even uneducated people, still appreciate harmony. And so if you developed this skill or this talent to be a harmonious person, you can gain a certain kind of it's almost like a charisma, where you're able to help calm yourself down, and you're also able to help others to calm themselves down, able to bring a level of allayment, of reducing conflict. I think this may be a good moment to stop and ask for your questions. We've been practicing this theme or this topic for a couple of months now at our community up at Dhamma Darini. We took this idea of the practice of peace as a theme for the study and practice during this Vasa. And the one measure that I really had in my mind, my wish, my aspiration, was not only can we, each of us, learn to feel more calm or feel more peaceful internally, but is it also possible to make it real in the sense that we'd see that our skillfulness in interacting with each other, interacting with things that are challenging, that come along, finding a way to actually really raise the level of making our community life to be even more friendly, more harmonious, more friendly, and actually more joyful, because of having this experience of mutually having a shared commitment to this practice of peace. And so what I'm hoping today, like this is a day for meditation, but I'm hoping you might also come away with some ideas about how you could make your life on the job or at school or among your family to become actually more harmonious. Is there a way to make it real? So the questions I want to know is any question you have about meditation or any question about like what you would like to learn about during the rest of this retreat to become a real peacemaker. Okay.
How do I live harmoniously alongside my suffering? So how do I take that suffering and turn it into something positive?
So would you mind coming close to me? I'm a little bit hard of hearing, and also the hall is not very great. Yeah. Yeah.
How do I take my suffering and live alongside it harmoniously?
Yeah, right.
How
So
do I take that suffering and turn it into something positive?
that's a wonderful question. How to take suffering and turn it into to be harmonious with suffering. So one answer is don't look for suffering. While doing a meditation retreat, for example, you might think about some relative or some friend who's very difficult. And it may be quite tempting to use the time in meditation just thinking about how difficult that person is and how they should improve themselves. Or else, if one is experiencing a depression or grief or anxiety, one can be in a meditation retreat and then the unhappy feeling comes up. And then there's a temptation in the retreat to go and like to investigate, what is this unhappy feeling? What is this painful feeling? Where is this coming from? What's the cause of this? Is it something, that happened this morning, or is it something that happened long ago? Is it something that my parents did to me when I was a child? And one can spend a lot of time investigating, but for the amount of time during meditation, if one can more or less, it's like having a stoic attitude. The things that we don't control are the things that are arising because of previous causes and conditions. So some previous causes and conditions cause in the present moment unpleasant something to arise. And if one is able to just acknowledge, oh, this is unpleasant, and try as well as possible to relax around that and to come back to the object of meditation, which could be, as I was giving this morning, the breath, or it could be even the thought of loving kindness or some other object of meditation. So during a meditation retreat, when painful thoughts and feelings come up, acknowledge them as being unpleasant and try to come back to the object. If the unpleasant feeling, or if oftentimes when there's unpleasant feeling, then a lot of thoughts come pouring in, you start thinking and thinking and thinking. So then if you would analyze it at the level of the body, saying, what's happening to my body with these thoughts? So it could be that like these thoughts are making the chest to be tight, or these thoughts are making the shoulders to be tight, or causing flushing or tears or something like that. And then just watching what's happening in the body. And then even try, if you can, on purpose, to relax the tension in the body, because the body and mind are connected. And so the painful thought can relax when making the body to be relaxed. There are more ways to analyze about one's own suffering. And you're giving me a good idea. I may speak more about this afterwards in terms of the seeing like in the 5 aggregates, to see like certain perceptions are the cause of suffering. If you have the perception, this is unfair, this is unjust, this is wrong, or something like that, that perception might be not completely true. And if you can see that it's not completely true, you can pay attention to a different aspect of things. So like the person who's torturing me, actually they mean well. They're doing their best. It's just because of their ignorance that they're torturing me. And so then one can, instead of paying attention to the perception that is causing my painful emotion, my suffering, don't pay attention to that perception, pay attention to something else, like they're trying their best. Or even, but there's a simile of hatred. If you see somebody whose thoughts are evil and whose actions are evil and whose words are evil, and they're completely evil in every possible way, you would compare them to if you were walking in a desert and you saw somebody who was injured and ill, and they're very far from help. They're not able to get to the next village. They have no way of getting help. They could die right there if they didn't get any help. So the person who's completely ill, completely evil, is like that. And with that, instead of hating them for being so evil, you would feel compassionate for them. You know, that person might be headed for a difficult life, a painful life, a difficult rebirth. They may be living a hellish existence. So, yeah, so we can do more about this, about analyzing one's own suffering to find ways to be calm. Eventually, if you keep practicing, it's possible to have those painful reactions to become very light and very short. It's just almost like you feel the disturbance, the upset, and then you can see it. You know it's impermanent because of cause and condition. And then the painful reaction can go away in a minute, in less than a minute, in a second it can go away and be replaced with great compassion. So it's possible, but until we find out how, then we need to learn how to be stoic, practicing the stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, the Greek philosopher, and learn how to patiently bear up to our own suffering, our own difficulties, until we get learn the skills of this wonderful way of practice that the Buddha teaches us. Good, thank you for that. Okay.
I have a question. Sometimes you want to, you want to cooperate, you want to work with a person who doesn't want to work with you well. You try to go out of the way, you extend help, you try to be more compassionate or something. But you kind of don't feel anything coming back from them or acknowledging it or something, and then they will use all your help, but then at the end of it, they will just keep you away, or they just want to. What I want to think is people are being selfish, more driven, more egoistic, and they feel they're right, and then still they're right, and then they just move on. Sometimes you get in the middle of it, you kind of feel like all this effort, what you're putting in to turn the situation around, that you have to do. How to feel at ease and still be happy or
Right.
done your part.
Thank you. That's also a wonderful question. In terms of our communication and our interactions with other people. The Buddha taught not just the Dhamma, which is the truth, the wisdom. He taught the Dhamma Vinaya. So you could say the Dhamma is related to how to understand the world. And the Vinaya is about how to behave in the world, how to practice, not only for the monks and nuns. The Vinaya is very specific and laid out in terms of a lot of rules and procedures. But persons who are lay people also, the Buddha taught a lot of different things about how to react and how to comport yourself in different kinds of situations, including the situation where you want to behave harmoniously with kindness, but you don't feel it's reciprocated, that your kindness is not returned with a friendly attitude from the other person. There's one wonderful sutta. I'm going to tell about the sutta this afternoon. It's called the Chodana Sutta, about criticism. And it gives sort of like a checklist of the way things that you should make sure that you're doing the right way when you're giving somebody a criticism, so that you don't cause harm to yourself or cause harm to that other person. And if one gives perfect criticism that's given at the right time, it's truthful, it's beneficial, and it's done with a kindness, an inner heart of kindness. Then there's a chance that the person who receives that criticism, if they're doing something wrong, something unskillful, if it's to their benefit to learn how to change, then they have a chance to pick it up. But then there's a kind of a reverse about this, which is when one is receiving a criticism. This is when the person doesn't reciprocate to you, and you're trying to be kind and loving towards them, and they reply in a way which is aggressive towards you, or which seems to be hateful towards you, or bullying towards you, or something like that. And if the criticism that you receive from another is not perfect on those 4 counts, even on any one of those counts, the Buddha says you don't need to feel remorse about it. Now, this is something that it came out. We had a discussion, some of us in the room were here when we did the sutta study about that sutta. And then we had some further discussion afterwards about this idea of not picking up remorse or a guilty conscience because of being on the receiving end of unfair, unskillful given criticism. So the most outstanding example of that would be prejudice. In this world, if because of your race, your color, your gender, or your social position in life, that then if people are treating you as being unworthy, not respectable, not deserving, and giving you a lot of blame and criticism, which is based on hatred and prejudice like that, then you would not need to internalize that as remorse. Now, if somebody gives a good criticism, which is wise and based on kindness, based on the truth, then you should feel remorse just long enough to make a determination to change what you have that's unskillful and to try to become more skillful and to improve yourself. But when the criticism is based on a prejudice, based on hatred, then you do not need to internalize it as remorse. And in that way, you don't need to be hating yourself. Just because other people hate you, don't mean you hate yourself. Just because other people are harsh with you, doesn't mean that you will become harsh with yourself. Just because other people are disrespectful towards you, doesn't mean that you will become disrespectful towards yourself. In a way, those harsh conditions are more like a wildfire or a flood or a thunderstorm or some other feature in nature. So when there's a danger that comes up because of nature, of course, we try to take care of it and do the skillful thing to take care of ourselves. And to the extent that we have got a fault ourselves, we can see our own fault, and we can learn how to take care of our own fault by making the determination and learning how to give up our unskillful, faulty behavior and undertaking that which is better. So that's one a significant aspect of peacemaking. It would be like not picking it up and not responding to the extent that what's coming at you is unskillful. In a certain way, you're not picking it up and not reacting to that. Years ago, I had a friend who was an elderly bhikkhuni. She was wise. And the place where I was staying, there were some bhikkhus. It was a bhikkhu community. And there was one young bhikkhu who was known as the grumpy bhikkhu. He was young. He was not very long in his training. And he was continuously dissatisfied and complaining about things. And there came to be one occasion when this grumpy young bhikkhu attacked this elderly bhikkhuni with harsh criticisms. And the way she responded, just in a moment, she just backed away. And she didn't respond. She didn't give an answer right at that time. She just excused herself and didn't give an answer right at that time. And then the next following day, when she saw this grumpy bhikkhu again, she gave him a very friendly, "Good morning, how are you? I hope you're feeling well." And didn't talk about the previous conflict. Talked about anything else except the previous conflict, just acting nice and friendly. And what happened within a very short amount of time is the grumpy bhikkhu fell in love with this elderly bhikkhuni and became like so loyal to her and so friendly and appreciative of her. And why is it? It's because somebody who is habitually complaining all the time, they're like the wood that's used on the funeral pyre. They're burned on both ends and dirty in the middle, and nobody wants to touch it. So somebody who's always grumpy and always complaining, nobody wants to be with you. They don't want to talk to you. Other people would not be friendly to you as if what you always give out is complaints. And so this elderly bhikkhuni was the only one who was like so nice and warm and friendly towards this young monk who was like lonely because his bad habit of complaining all the time has caused him to be somewhat of a social pariah within that community. And so she created a tremendous transformation. And in that case, the trick that she had was quite simple, was just not to engage at the time when there was activated conflict. And then at the other time to respond with a really strong, clear kindness. And so that's sort of a simple story, but there are many tricks that one can find, or one can discover these methods almost intuitively if you really have the intention not to pick up a quarrel, but instead to be a peacemaker. Yeah.
What you're saying is for possible. What we work
Yeah. 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 Now, at the time when somebody is able to listen to advice, then it is possible to give them advice. And so it could be that, like at another time, after she's made friends with this bhikkhu, and she's earned his trust and confidence, that then in a very kind of like a relaxing way, having a cup of tea, say, Venerable, you might consider not complaining so much. You might find your life is happier if you were more cautious in not complaining. And it could be that if he knows that she's kind and that she means well, then he would be willing to think about it. See, so she waited for the right time when it was possible to give that advice and to give it in a skillful way.
Not at the coping strategy to look for pleasure. So what other coping strategies that we can take? We can accept the pain, still the pain is there. Other than pleasure, what other coping strategies?
Well, I'd say the one other coping, I'll call it a coping strategy, which is the most powerful, is to develop the perception of what's called the tilakkhana, are the three characteristics, which is true of everything that we encounter in samsara. Knowing that all things are impermanent, all conditioned things. That's the ordinary things that we encounter in life, everything except the nibbana element. All conditioned things are impermanent. All conditioned things are unsatisfactory. All conditioned things are unsatisfactory. And all conditioned things are without a self. When you really get that wisdom firmly planted in your mind, well developed, then nothing will really disturb you so much anymore. Something difficult comes along, you say, oh, it's impermanent. I can bear this for a little while because it's impermanent. Or else something that you really want, you get something you really want, and you start to get excited and lose your mindfulness because you're getting what you want. And then you remember, oh, this is impermanent. Let me calm down and not be too excited. If you know it's unsatisfactory, then if something unpleasant happened, then instead of saying, oh no, I'm going to file a protest, it's unsatisfactory. Everything is supposed to be satisfactory. Why is this unsatisfactory? Then you would just think, well, the Buddha is right. You know, human beings are naturally unskillful. They do so many unskillful things. So then, and then if you have the perception about non-self, that you don't place an identity on anything as being a permanent fixed characteristic of that thing, or a fixed characteristic of that person, or a fixed characteristic of that situation, but just seeing it all as phenomenon arising because of causes and conditions that's constantly changing. And we're just at a particular moment in the flow of things. So I know this may seem abstract from everyday concerns, but developing and cultivating those three perceptions is the most powerful coping mechanism for coping with the things that we encounter here in this conditioned world. Being we're a material being, we're made of flesh and blood. We have these bodies that are continuously falling apart. We're continuously getting hungry and having to feed the body, continuously getting dirty and having to wash the body, continuously having the emotional reactions that came about because of the nature of a human being, and also the emotions that were planted in us by our social conditioning and our particular history. You know, all of these things, that's just part of the landscape. And if you think this thing is making me miserable, I have to get out of it. If you place the problem exterior to yourself, you're never going to come to the end of the race. You'll always be trying to get rid of the exterior things that are making you miserable, always trying to solve it. But if you're patient, then sometimes the circumstances that you inquire, the social things, it may be obvious that you were able to make it more peaceful, more beneficial. And then you can be glad and satisfied with that. Or it may not be obvious at the time that you're able to make something exterior to yourself to be better, calm down, more peaceful, more harmonious. But then you can think, well, at least I didn't allow inner hatred to arise in me. At least I didn't do anything that's creating a bad karma, which is going to be affecting my karmic future. Or if you did do something unskillful, if you did let anger arise in yourself, then you can somewhat look at a detached way to your own causes and conditions within your psychology and say, well, it's because of my history, because of my training, because of how much I've developed. These things happen sometime. I understand what the Buddha taught. Let me make the determination, the resolve, not to be ruled by anger and to let go of anger whenever it arises and to do my best to cultivate wholesome states and to let the wholesome states rule. Let the unwholesome states be very brief. If they arise, let them be quickly let go of, or let them be prevented altogether. So that's a way that we can accept our failures and accept the failures of all the persons around us without being disturbed. I think we've come to 11 o'clock.
Walking.
I was just thinking to suggest if you are not needing to do something about getting the food ready for offering, this is a good time to use the time for walking meditation until you hear the signal that it's time to come in for the formal offering of the meal.
So I was double checking on the time, the website says meal offering at 11, but I went out and double checked. It's actually at 11:30, so we can have walking meditation until 11:15 and then maybe go out to the tables and keep on.
I don't know if anybody needs instruction.
That is my good question. If anybody already knows how to do walking meditation, I invite you to leave this hall and practice walking meditation outside. And those who would like instructions in walking meditation to stay back.